Today, as you can tell by the title of this video, we're talking about a lot of telephoto lenses here. The 400 2.8 with a 1.4 teleconverter, the 400 4.5, and the 70 to 200 with the 2x teleconverter. And instead of giving you a review on these lenses and how good they are, because we all know they're all very, very good, of course, the 400 4.5 will come in at a much less expensive price than the 400 2.8. That 2.8 is going to give you that teleconverter, but it is very pricey and it is very specific. I'm going to talk to you about what I learned, the mistakes that I made that hopefully will help you along the way if you're new to this. Here's some sample images, and we'll come back to talk about what it's like to use these lenses. First and foremost, know your equipment, how that focal length works, how's the autofocusing work, how's the light, if it's a higher aperture, let's say it's a 4.5 or 5.6, how is that going to affect your image? How is it like to look with your naked eye, but then you look through the camera, through the lens? How is that focal patch? All that comes into play. And all these things take time and they take practice. And so if you're going to go out and do sports and wildlife photography, you're going to invest in these kind of lenses, go out around your neighborhood, go to a park and just practice. Moving around with the lens, seeing the weight of the lens, seeing how it focuses, seeing how it holds, seeing how it balances. All these things are very important. And I made a lot of mistakes initially with these lenses. That is one of the biggest things I would say. Know your equipment. Understand lighting. Lighting is key when you're using these kind of lenses, especially when you're doing sports and wildlife. You want to capture the light on the subject that you're tracking or you're shooting. They are moving relatively fast. I was shooting planes and helicopters, and I was shooting cars, and these things are lightning quick, but you want to capture the best image possible. So you need to know where your light is coming from and be positioned in the right way. Case in point, one of the days I was taking the 400 2.8 out, I was catching this National Day parade we have here in Singapore once a year. And there was these helicopters and these planes coming in. I was positioned in a place where I was getting a lot of backlight. Now it's great for that silhouette shot. It's great for that kind of dramatic shot. But if I wanted to capture the front of the helicopter, if I wanted to capture the front of a plane, I'm not getting that shot unless I really boost up the shadows and I'm really kind to push that image above and beyond. Noise is going to creep in. You're not going to get that beautifully sharp image you would naturally get if you're in the right lighting. Look where you're going to go shoot, check the lighting, check the time of day, and position yourself wisely. It will save you a lot of time in post and you'll capture a much more beautiful image. Another thing is breathe. What do I mean by that? You know, when we get into the mix of these things, right? The moment you see a plane fly by or helicopter coming in, you're going, I got to get this shot. I got to get this shot. I got the tracking ready. I'm ready to go. And you're just firing away burst modes, but you're forgetting maybe you need to adjust your shutter speed a little bit. Maybe you need to adjust the ISO a little bit. Maybe you need to drop down the aperture, push up the aperture a bit more. And you're in the moment, but you're so caught up getting that photo, you don't take a breath and go, wait a second. What exactly do I need to set my camera at? Because you're going to be adjusting your camera as you're shooting. It happens all the time. Take that breath, reassess, get ready, know your settings, know your camera, know your equipment. Kind of goes back to the first point, but all of this does come in handy. And I'll tell you what, the photographers that I've been around, the professionals, the ones that are relaxed, they're prepared, they get the most beautiful shots because they know what they're doing. But the novices, like myself at times, I get so excited about getting these shots. My shutter speed's too high, then my ISO creeps up, or it's too low, and I'm not getting the sharp shot that I want, or I'm on the wrong aperture, or whatever it may be. So sometimes it's good to just breathe. What else did I learn? No matter what, sometimes the autofocus is going to fail. No matter how good the camera is, the Z9 is fantastic. I've used the Alpha 1, I've used the Canon R5, R3, R6, doesn't matter. And I don't mean fail as that they're going to break down, but sometimes they're just not going to lock on for whatever reason. It could be a lighting situation. It could be that there's something in front of it. Case in point, I was shooting these fighters at this 1FC mixed martial arts event here, and I was shooting through a fence. And sometimes that fence is going to get in the way of the autofocusing system there, no matter if you're doing eye tracking or what, and you're going to have to rely on sometimes manual focusing. Actually, it's a really good thing. All this great technology, I mean, we pay for it, right? These cameras are expensive. We expect to have the best of the best. But depending on where you're at, this technology is 100% foolproof. And sometimes you're going to have to rely on understanding manual focus, understanding it to go into manual mode on these cameras to get the shot that you need. Now, some may argue with me on this one, some may disagree. They go, oh no, that's the camera. Well, I've tried every single camera system and they've all had issues one time or another. And sometimes you just have to rather go, you know what? Continuous autofocus isn't working. I'm going to go to single autofocus. Okay, that's not working. I'm going to manual. And sometimes going back to the basics helps a lot. Shooting JPEG is sometimes better than shooting RAW. Yeah, how about that? You know what? We always hear this on all the YouTube channels, shooting RAW, and I watch the channels too. And for the most part, I do shoot RAW about 95% of the time. But when you're shooting sports or anything fast moving, planes and helicopters, per se, well, helicopters don't move that fast, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Or F1 for that matter, sometimes it's better to shoot in JPEG. Why? Because if you have the focal reach, it doesn't mean you have to crop in so much, but also too, you're gonna be shooting a lot of photos. Now, depending on the size of your CF Express card or SD card, that can fill up relatively quick when you're shooting RAW. Plus, the buffer will kick in a lot faster in RAW than it will on JPEG. It just happens. When you talk to a lot of the sports photographers out there, and you say, hey, do you guys shoot in RAW? They're like, no, I shoot in JPEG a lot of the times, especially when I'm capturing fast action and burst modes, because I don't have time to process those images, number one, and I need the maximum capacity in my car to get as many photos as I possibly need for my job. I predict is why the Z9 at 30 frames per second is JPEG versus RAW is because most of the time you're gonna be shooting at 30 frames per second, you're probably gonna use those as JPEGs and you're gonna get them out to your editor as soon as possible. And I have found that shooting in JPEG for these situations has not made my images any less than shooting RAW. As a matter of fact, the images coming out of camera were fantastic. It did save me a lot of space in my car and allowed me to shoot more. So shooting in JPEG sometimes isn't so bad when you're going in burst modes at those high frame rates. Another point, composition, right? This is tricky because here you are trying to capture, for example, a plane moving by or a bird moving by, or you're in an F1 track, you're trying to capture a Formula One car going, a crazy amount of speeds around the track. But at the same time, you want to keep your photo interesting. You don't want to get so close up on the subject that you don't see the surroundings, you don't see what's around you, to kind of give the viewer of the image a perspective or an ambiance, or give them or bring them into the moment that you're capturing. And we see this a lot with wildlife photographers, and the really good ones and the not so good ones. Sometimes they get so close up on a bird and it's awesome to see, you don't get an essence of where the bird is at. Is it in a mountain? Is it on a water? Is it that you don't see any of that? It's just completely blown out background and just the bird's head. It looks great, and some people love those kind of shots, but it's always good to have composition. And this is something I learned from a lot of photographers trying out these lenses as well, is sometimes it's good to take a step back, don't have to get so close. You can always crop in if you want to, but give people an essence of what you're shooting. And that's where the technique comes into play, where I have had a newfound respect for wildlife and sports photographers, how they can capture an image, pivotal moment, but at the same time give you the ambiance of where you're at, where you go, that's what it's like to be there. And that's the beauty of what we do here for photography especially. And it takes a lot of practice. It may be a little bit out of focus. It may be a little bit blur, but it's the entire photo that speaks to somebody, not just how sharp it is. I hope these points do help you out along the way. I'm not a professional sports photographer, wildlife photographer. I like to do it for fun. Sometimes I get some really cool images, and other times I get a lot of bad images. I wanted to kind of give you some insight of what I learned, and hopefully if you're getting new to this can help you out as well. So if you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button and hit that notification bell. A lot more great content is coming your way. Thanks for joining me once again, and I will chat to you soon. Take care.